Welcome. I think we should get the meeting started.
Sounds like a good plan. Do we have a quorum?
We have more than a quorum.
Wonderful. So, welcome. I'm Vicki Brown, Presbytery moderator, and this meeting is called to order. While this is a virtual meeting, we are all on land that was inhabited and cared for by Native peoples, and we pause to acknowledge their stewardship and to offer our gratitude to the elders past and present who have stewarded it through the generations. This afternoon, we extend a warm welcome to any first-time commissioners attending this meeting. We are grateful for your service to your congregation and to the Presbytery. It is our custom as a Presbytery to begin our meeting with worship. And I want to extend thanks to our Southern Region Vice Moderator, Murray Richmond, and First Presbyterian Church Medford for your leadership.
Murray, are you still here? And
yes, I am still here.
you need did we make you a co-host yet? Okay. While we're waiting for that, we'll welcome Steve Mitchell, who is a United Methodist pastor serving our Christ Church congregation in Monmouth, one of our newer folks to be a member of the Presbytery. So welcome, Steve. Glad you could make it to this meeting. I know we're all friends. I didn't realize we were the society.
Good afternoon. Please join me in this opening prayer, our time together. Gracious God, in whom we find our greatest joy, through whom we are led to great responsibilities, we ask that you would calm our hearts, direct our thoughts, that we would be responsible elders, that we would work hard to see your kingdom come, as it will through Presbytery, the Cascades, and the decisions we make this afternoon. We ask that you would comfort those who mourn, bring peace to the conflicted, and hope and joy to your creation. In Christ's name, amen.
Holy The lesson is from Luke. It's the lectionary lesson for this week. So maybe I'll give you some ideas on your sermons this Sunday if you're preaching on the lectionary. Listen for the word of God. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him. On their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him, but they did not receive him because his face was set towards Jerusalem. When his disciples, James and John, saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" But he turned and rebuked them, and they went on to another village. As they were going down the road, someone said to Jesus, "I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes, and the birds of the air have their nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." To another he said, "Follow me." But that man said, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Let the dead bury their own dead, but as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God." Another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those in my home." And Jesus said to him, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God." The word of God for the people of God. Some of you may know this, but I'm a fan of the Grateful Dead. Now, I'm not a follower of the Grateful Dead. My brother was a follower of the Grateful Dead, but I'm a fan. When they were in town, I would come and I would listen to the music. I would enjoy the concerts. If they played two shows, I'd buy tickets for both shows. And I've seen them a fair amount of times, and I've actually really enjoyed them. I'm a fan. My brother was a follower. When they were touring, he would buy tickets to locations throughout the country where they were playing, close his business, get in his Jeep, and head for as many shows as he could before he had to go back and reopen his business. And not only my brother did that, I don't know if you've ever been to a Grateful Dead concert, I'm sure some of you have, but one of the strangest and most beautiful things you'll see is the parking lot at a Grateful Dead concert full of followers of the Grateful Dead called Deadheads. And interacting with one another and taking care of one another. So, some people give away tickets to the followers. All sorts of interesting things happen there. And those are the followers. Jesus doesn't want fans. Jesus wants followers. In the section that we read today, there are different people who were dealing with what it meant to follow Jesus. You have James and John that clearly haven't learned anything because they want to call down revenge on a village that didn't accept Jesus. You've got the first man who says he will follow Jesus anywhere, whatever Jesus wants. But Jesus kind of sees that his commitment is a mile wide but an inch deep, and he tells him, yeah, you can do that, but we don't have 4-star hotels to stay in. This is going to be hard. And then the third man who wants to bury his father, and that doesn't mean that there's a corpse in his house. His father died that morning or something. He's got to go home and bury him. It means he wanted to see his father through to the end of his days. And Jesus says to him, you got to do what you're going to do now. Do that. Follow God. Proclaim the kingdom of God. And then there's the last guy. He's the one I really want to focus on a little bit. The third man comes up to Jesus and offers to follow him, but he says, first, let me say farewell to my family. Now, I'm assuming that Jesus saw something in the way he said those words, because what he tells him is, you can't put your hand to the plow and be looking back. When I lived in Germany as a student, I knew a lot of other American students, and you could basically split them up into two groups. There were those that just threw themselves into the culture, threw themselves into the language, threw themselves into meeting Germans and learning all they could and traveling. And they got a lot out of living in Germany. And the Germans who knew them got a lot out of meeting these people. The other group never really left home. They would sit around and complain about how things were different in Germany. Well, it is a different country. And when they went out to eat, they'd go to McDonald's or Pizza Hut or places like that. Their bodies were in Germany, but their hearts hearts and minds are elsewhere. Jesus calls us to follow him, and he doesn't want just our body doing things by rote. He wants us to follow him. He wants us to leave the comforts that we have behind and keep our hands on the plow. Now, I don't know a lot about plowing. I got to be honest, I've never plowed anything in my life, maybe a small garden plot. But I'm going on a limb here, and I'm assuming, having seen people plow, that when you plow, you want to make a straight line. And the best way to do that is to look straight ahead at something. And if you keep your eye focused on what that is, you keep moving towards that, then you'll have a straight furrow. But if you keep looking back at what's behind you, look at what I did, you're going to veer off to the side. Jesus wants us to plow straight furrows. And the way we do that is by keeping our eyes on Jesus. We're in a meeting today, and there's going to be a lot of business that goes on, and a lot of stuff that's just kind of pro forma. You know, it takes a lot to run a denomination, and we're going to be doing a lot of busy work. But at the same time, I hope and pray during this meeting, we are still following Jesus. We still have our eyes on who Jesus is, what he did, and what he taught. In this passage, we are told that Jesus had set his face to go to Jerusalem. Jesus had his hand on the plow. He knew where he was going. And he called us to follow him. He was going to Jerusalem to confront the powers, not just to die, but to confront the powers. He confronted the political powers. He confronted the religious powers. He confronted social norms. He confronted the power of two mobs of people, one praising him and one calling for his death. He stood before Pilate, the representative of the greatest government on the face of the earth at that time, and told him that Pilate's government had nothing on him. He stood on the steps of the temple and told the religious leaders of the day that what they were teaching their people was wrong. It wasn't loving, and it wasn't pulling people to God. He fought social norms by accepting the outcast and loving the unlovable, even those men who were nailing him to a cross. He showed us how to love in the way he loved his disciples. And he confronted the final enemy that faces all of us, death. His death and resurrection, we have the hope of an eternal future. So during this meeting, remember, we always do well to keep our eyes on him, and he will take us to some very interesting places. Amen.
We're ready to continue the meeting. Amen.
Thank you, Murray, and everyone who participated in that worship service. So the first item of business is to adopt the docket. The docket is found on page 2 of the full packet of the background papers. The stated clerk has informed me of a need to amend the docket. we need to move the report of the treasurer from 3:30 to after the elections and before the Commission on Ministry at 4:40. Is there any objection to moving the report of the treasurer? Okay, if you wish to object to adopting the amendment by unanimous consent, please unmute and say objection. Okay, I don't hear anything. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted and the treasurer's report is moved to follow after the elections. Are there any other amendments? If you wish to propose a change to the docket, please use the raise hand feature to seek recognition. Once recognized, you may unmute and speak. I don't see anyone seeking recognition. If you're trying to find your raised hand button and haven't yet, just please unmute and request recognition. Okay, are you ready to vote? Looks like it. We're voting on the motion to adopt the docket as amended. We'll vote on the motion using a Zoom poll, and it will appear on your screen shortly. The vote is on the motion to adopt the amended docket. Those in favor of adopting the docket will select yes, and those opposed will select no. The stated clerk will now display the poll to the screen. Click your choice and then click the submit button down near the bottom of the poll. The poll will be closing soon. If you haven't already done so, click and submit. The poll is closed. The stated clerk will display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion. All right. Yes.
Moderator, there are 72 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative.
Thank you. That was our practice. We did well. Let's see. The next item on our adopted docket is the consent agenda, which is found on page 3 of the complete background papers. The consent agenda is a way to quickly handle non-controversial business matters so that we can devote more time to other more complicated or controversial matters. If you believe any of the items listed on the consent agenda require debate or correction, or you wish to vote against one or more items, you will want to remove that item or those items from the consent agenda so that they can be taken up later in the meeting. Any item that is not removed from the consent agenda will be adopted. So if you see an item in the consent agenda that you would like to discuss or oppose, please use the raised hand icon in order to seek recognition. I'm not seeing any raised hands. The remaining items on the consent agenda will be adopted in gross by unanimous consent. To object, please unmute and say objection. Without objection, the consent agenda is adopted. So we've reached the time for new business. New business means any motions that you wish the Presbytery to take action on. Presbytery has a standing rule stating that ordinarily new business will be referred to committee unless 2/3 of the Presbytery agrees to discuss it later during the meeting. If you've not yet entered your new business into the chat as a motion, this is now the time. And if you're just chatting on the chat, please stop for a few minutes so we can catch any motions for new business. Should say motion. all in caps. And if you're still trying to get it in there and we haven't seen it yet, please stop typing and just raise your hand or unmute and let us know. Okay, there being no new business, the next item is the report of the Presbytery for Vision and Mission.
Thank you,
Ryan.
Madam Moderator.
Yeah, good.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you virtually here. Always good to connect in this time when we're not physically able to be together as much. I do want to start off by just thanking Paul, Sherry, Kelly, Cole, and Vicki for the work and preparation that goes into these meetings. We're all learning something new here with the technology and the complications and the complexity of pulling a number of committee reports together, the technology, the scripting, the videos. There's a lot that goes into it, and I just want to say thank you to those 5 who are doing the bulk of the work on this. So thank you. I think this was not planned, but want to take to heart what Murray said about focusing on Jesus. I'm actually approaching my report a little bit different this time, and I think it's something about the time we're in. It just felt like doing the usual kind of here's what we're doing, what I'm doing, and what PLC is doing. Just didn't feel quite right for the spirit of the time. So what I'd like to do is actually start off with a scripture that felt appropriate for this time and that spoke to me. And first, before I begin to read, is just take a couple of breaths so that you're in touch with your own body and emotions, so you can see which parts of that scripture touch you and resonate with you as I'm going through this. So I'm reading from Romans 12, verses 1 and 2 and 9 through 13 from the Message translation. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for God. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what God wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. So love from the center of who you are. Don't fake it. Run for dear life from evil. Hold on for dear life to good. Be good friends who love deeply. Practice playing second fiddle. Don't burn out. Keep yourselves fueled and aflame. Be alert servants of the Master, cheerfully expectant. Don't quit in hard times. Pray all the harder. Help the needy and be inventive in hospitality. May God bless the reading of the word. You know, when I was thinking about doing this report, generally how I approach it is to let you know what it is that I'm doing and what PLC is doing. And something didn't feel quite right about that question and about that approach of reporting what we're doing. It just seemed like in this time, we should be thinking more about how ought we to be? What's the character that's going to get us through this? And so I'm still going to report on a lot of what is happening, but what I want to focus on is, really what is the character that's going to carry us through this time. Just the fact that I'm doing this combined PLC and PVM, my report together, is an indication of what's taking place in our presbytery right now. I just got an update on Dwight Caswell, who has been the Presbytery Leadership Commission chairperson, and he has been unable to serve the last 2 or 3 months, and Gail Black has stepped in to fill things out for the last couple of months. We just got the report that Dwight continues to be in ICU in Portland, and that his lungs no longer have the capacity to function without a ventilator. And so Rhonda is asking for prayers because this really leads to the time of making some decisions and some discernment as they decide how best to go forward and what is God's will for both of them in this time. So, and that's Dwight's condition and why it is that we're approaching the reports this way. But I want to let you know that I'm seeing this same sort of pattern show up in the presbytery. I can't tell you how many times we have postponed meetings during the last year where there's just issues that come up where, you know, if we have a team of 6 or 7, 3 or 4 say, you know, we've had illness, there's quarantines going on, they're doing family business, there's exhaustion, and over again, we're finding ourselves simply moving ahead as fast as our souls and our bodies can carry us. And I think what I want to say in this time, when I think about a more typical time in my role, I might have said to somebody, okay, come on, you guys, you got to step it up, you know, and that just doesn't feel right. It just feels like we're in a time where we really need to extend grace and understanding. Yeah, there's nothing else to say except we need a lot of grace and understanding as we move through this time, and we'll continue to do the business of the presbytery, but we need to take care of each other. A couple of the projects that we're working on, one is the Barbie's Village, which is the Native American tiny home project on the former Laurelhurst project, and I'm also speaking about this in conjunction with the Oregon Coast Trail Pilgrimage Project. And the reason I'm putting those two together is that both of those are innovative projects where we don't know exactly what the end result is going to be, but the process is very much the same. There's a lot of trust and discernment and relationship building that is going on in that. And one of the things, just to be honest, that has shown up in both of those projects is that one of the things that surfaced as we have begun to build relationships in both of those projects is that there's long-standing resentments and hurts, as well as the highlighting of some structural injustices that have been in place, you know, really for decades and decades in our structures and our society. And the good news is those are getting surfaced. It's also kind of a part of a barrier of moving forward as we work through those things. But both in the Oregon Coast Trail Pilgrimage Project and Barbie's Village, because we are working with relationships with Native American communities, part of what we're working on also is simply the restoring and the healing of our relationship so that we can do a project together. And so when I think about the character that we'll be needing to move through this time, I think we really need to approach this with a spirit of humility and even confession and lament and receptivity to the people around us and their stories and their narrative. Two of the other projects that we are working on, one is the infrastructure review team that underneath the personnel administration committee. And that team is basically working on the proposals to help us live into our new mission and vision statements. Also, what came out of the Presbytery Leadership Commission in this last meeting was to develop a task force on chartering congregations and other fellowships. And that's the result of a request by the community of pilgrims to move from fellowship to a chartered organization, chartered church. And what it's raising in this time is what is that relationship between a fellowship and a congregation? What constitutes a congregation? This is also an issue if you happen to listen to J. Herbert Nelson's sermon on Juneteenth. There's conversations about whether there shouldn't be any fellowships, but all congregations, no matter what size, all groups of people in churches, no matter what size, should be considered congregations. So we're asking the philosophical question of what constitutes a fellowship and what constitutes a congregation. But again, I think we're stepping into new territory in both of these. And I believe we need a spirit to be able to be responsive to the time that we're in, flexible, imaginative, and innovative. We don't necessarily have the book of order, the bylaws that tells us exactly how to do this. But we need to be able to make these decisions in ways that reflect the best of the character of Christ in our communities. And the last one isn't so much a project as much as it's just the spiritual and emotional terrain of the time that we are in. It doesn't really need to be said, but just to lay it out again, we're in the midst of the January 6th hearings right now on the investigation. A lot of reports we're seeing now are showing that there's a pretty deep amount of economic fracturing in our society with inflation and a lot of transition in jobs as well as resignations. We're still feeling the sting of the ongoing mass shootings and issues around gun violence in our society. And then just the fact that our meeting today is being held on the day that the Roe versus Wade was overturned. So there's all these just deep issues that are going on for us as a community, personally, in our families. And what I really hope for in this is that we don't end up with one of the two extremes. One is that we simply resort to the prayerful discernment, of thoughts and prayers. I think that's good and faithful, but that we are able to keep that balance between prayerful discernment and courageous action. And I don't know that any of us know exactly what that means, and even in our communities, exactly what it means. But as we move forward, to be able to keep those two things in balance, prayerful discernment and courageous action. I just want to end with a little anecdote I heard a number of years ago that really is speaking to me now. And this time of being faithful, true to who we are in our spirit and our tradition, and somehow surviving all of this at the same time. That a Native American tribe was apparently asked by someone where they said, with all that you have been through, with displacement, with disease, and with genocide, how is it that you cope, that you survive? And one of the members replied very simply, we sing. When things get tough,
Well, who's we?
we sing. One of the things that I say repeatedly to our staff as well as to the committees is that we aren't going to get through this by simply working harder. And that is sometimes, I think, our tendency in our Presbyterian tradition. We'll just dig in a little deeper and work harder, but I'm pretty convinced we're not going to get through this just by working harder. We're going to have to return to that which makes us most human. So my message today, along with all the things we're doing, is to remind you to sing and to knit and to hike, to make music, to hug your children and grandchildren, your grandmothers and your grandfathers, or the person closest to you. Eat good food, drink good wine, take good walks, get good sleep, and then breathe and trust. Breathe and trust. And in that way, we make our life an offering to God. May God bless us on our journey. Madam Moderator, that completes my report.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks. It's time for the report of the advocate for congregations and clergy. Clark, are you here?
Yes, I am, Madam Moderator.
Thank you.
All right, greetings, Presbytery of the Cascades. I'm grateful to be here with you and honored by your presence. As Brian indicated, this has been a very tumultuous season in the life of our nation, our world, and that certainly has impacted our presbytery and our congregations and the people that make up all of our churches and presbytery. And as I've mentioned in prior reports, we've primarily been seeing that in three really profound areas. One, in just the sheer amount of pastoral transition taking place. If our numbers hold out, probably about 1 out of every 3 of you here at this meeting is involved with a congregation or church who is in some kind of a pastoral transition. It has been a very a time of great movement. The second place we're seeing it is also there's an increase in conflict. Churches are struggling to know how to handle the ongoing challenges that come day after day and the additional stresses that come with diminished resources, fewer human resources, and those challenges. And then the third area, as you would expect, is with the folks in leadership, sessions, elders, and pastors that are carrying the weight of those decision-making responsibilities and trying to chart a faithful path forward. And so we've seen throughout our churches challenges in those areas, and we are working hard to figure out how to best support the presbytery with the work that is before it, with addressing these challenges, with leaning into our faith and being led forward through this time. And so coming out of that, there's been an extensive project underway, and I'm glad to report that we have now located 3 people to head up work in each of these areas. One in support of churches that are undergoing pastoral transition, one to support churches that are experiencing some form of conflict, and finally one to support pastors and other church leaders just emotionally and spiritually through this time. So the CUM devised these positions. We did a search at the last Presbytery meeting. I said, please apply. We had some really outstanding applicants, each of those positions. And in each of those areas, we were really impressed because of those, a person rose up that had, we believe, been equipped by God uniquely through their trainings, their experiences, to really not just take on this job that we've identified a need, but someone who had really already been developing a skill set and perspective how they could encourage our presbytery. So this really felt like a nice moment of partnership where we found a person that we believe God has called to this work, and we're now being able to integrate them into the ministry of our presbytery. So each of those 3 people in conflict resolution, we have Reverend Sarah Sanderson Dowdy, who's at St. Andrew's Presbyterian in Portland, heading up a conflict resolution team. For pastoral transitions, we have Reverend Brian Craker, who's finishing up an interim pastorate position himself at Salem First Presbyterian. And in terms of care for pastors, we have Reverend Susan Graham, who is currently an associate pastor at Lake Grove, focused on congregational care, and also the chair of our Commission on Ministry Northeast region. And each one of those is starting the work to build teams. We believe we do things better when we do them together. So they are not bearing the sole responsibility for each of these areas, but they are building teams where there'll be an opportunity to receive training in each of these areas and collaborate as we seek to support our churches and pastors. If you or someone you know has a sense of calling to participate in those, or some background or giftedness in any of these areas, please do reach out to me and let me know. We are seeking to get good folks on those teams, and I will connect you with the team leaders. Additionally, in the background papers, you can find under my staff report, you can find bios for each of those 3 people and a word from them, as well as their contact information if you'd like to contact them directly to find out more how you can be involved. But did want to share that good moment of progress for you and let you know there is some solid infrastructure on the way, and we hope as early as this fall we'll have those teams in place and trained and ready to be supporting the work of our presbytery. So I thank you all for your dedication, for your presence, for your faith to keep persevering through this time. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person, and if not, continuing to work alongside you in this virtual space. Madam Moderator, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Clark. So the next thing on our agenda, we're 5 minutes ahead, is a break. I don't know if we can take the personnel and administration report first, or if you're ready to stretch your legs.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, there were 2 voices at once.
I have a question.
Yes, Steve.
I was a little confused in reading the reports of PVM and PLC report, which said that we're shifting away from a model of providing support to churches and congregations. And then the advocate says we're in desperate need of, to support congregations. And so we're trying to come to terms with what that means.
Yes.
Does the establishment of these 3 new staff positions mean that that we won't come up against the failure of Presbytery to come to the timely aid of a church like Dallas, which is being sued by one of their former employees? Will there be somebody from that team or somebody that's available now? I know Paul took the bullet when we brought this to the attention of Presbytery, that there was a suit and really needed help with that. I'm not sure that I don't know exactly why Paul got that assignment. He did help find a lawyer, but at this point in time, that congregation, and it's small, it's struggling, is faced with at the least amount of a $5,000 legal fee. So who's going to come to the aid of that congregation, and when will we be able to see them?
Madam Moderator, I think I can answer the bigger philosophical question with it. Steve, I recognize what you're seeing there, and I think it's really a both and. So the PVM PLC report was really about the future direction of the Presbytery. So we're looking at over a long period moving more toward collaborative models, and it's simply a recognition that if we continue with a model where we're just individually supporting congregations, it's going to be unsustainable. And Clark was already reporting that the level of church transition and conflict we're seeing is going to be unsustainable for our staff. So this, for me, it's more like a 5 to 10 year plan. And the good news is we have these 3 new people who will be focusing on the individual churches. So we're trying to make sure that we have the individual support, which is really more beefing up our former model, even as we build for something new that we believe will need to be based more on not only collaboration between churches in our system, but ecumenical collaborations with other entities, whether it's nonprofits, government, business. We still have a model that's largely around supporting the individual churches. That will continue, and in fact, we've increased that by the hiring of these 3 folks. Does that help you understand?
Well, I recognize collaboration is the new word that we're now focusing on instead of what discernment or whatever it was before discernment. But collaboration means working together. But if there's no together, there's not a lot to work on.
Right, and that's why it's a long-term project. We recognize even working on the together part will take months, if not years, to get to that place. So this is where we're heading. But in the meantime, there's church transitions, there's church conflicts, there's legal issues. And so we will still be providing the support for those as well, and doing the best we can to keep up with all of that.
And so the reality question back to Dallas, where do we stand with Presbytery support or collaboration there?
So I personally can't answer that, but I wonder if that's something between Paul, maybe Clark, that can be handled offline, because I wouldn't want the whole Presbytery meeting to get into all of our individual church situations.
Is that satisfactory, Steve? To go into the details, maybe with COM or Clark or Paul?
As long as it happens.
I trust their work.
We'd be able to give an update of where that's at, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. We are at the stand up and stretch for a moment, and then we will hear the report from the Personnel Committee. Thanks. So I'm sorry, I forgot to tell people what time to be back, but I think 5 minutes are up on my watch. And Lisa, are you back and ready? Maybe not quite. There she is.
Sorry.
Yay, no problem.
I had a grandson inquiring after me.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So just a quick report from the Personnel and Administration Committee. We continue to meet monthly. As Brian already spoke, we are represented on the infrastructure review group, and out of that may come some work on another area that we're responsible for, and that is job profiles, creation thereof, and or adjusting current profiles, there will be some work in relation to that coming forward. We are working on a revised performance review process, which may involve some of you, because we will be launching that soon with the hope that we will finalize the performance reviews for all the staff in the fall. And we'll be asking for feedback from some of you on this call. Those of you that are leading committees and such may be asked to participate in that review. And then the other thing that I've been spending some time on is just getting ready for Paul's sabbatical. Paul and Brian and I have been meeting on a fairly regular basis to talk about how to best cover that important work while he's gone. It involves obviously those folks that are currently working within the Presbytery and many of you who are volunteering in lead capacities. So we really appreciate that. And the idea is that, Paul would be able to take this time off, leaving his work in good hands and up to date, and returning from his sabbatical, being able to be handed back things that are appropriate for his role. So I think that's my report.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next report comes from the Committee on Representation.
Okay.
Sharon, are you here? Yeah.
That's me.
Okay.
Pretty short and sweet today, or I hope. Basically, we're working on various projects I've told you about before. But one thing that we wanted to remind you all about is that since we have an emphasis on collaboration, we can see just looking around, listening to the news, that in these times we need to work with people outside of our own organizations. People who are different from ourselves, people have different perspective and life experience. And so to facilitate that, CORE makes decisions about applicants for the cross-cultural ministries partnership grants. So if you have an idea for your congregation to work with another entity for something that's, furthers the, beloved community, get the application on the website or from the Presbytery office, if need be, or you can contact me and I'll help you find it. CORE tries to make decisions about those at our next meeting. So our next meeting is the third Tuesday of July, which I think is the 19th at 5 o'clock. So if you can get that in, get any applications in or inquiries in by then, it would help. Paul's been staffing us, so I think that Brian is going to be sort of filling in for Paul. So and I think probably Paul's name is there as somebody to receive the application. So if you have an idea for an application, well, Paul's gone, I'm sure somebody in the Presbytery office can help, and Presbytery staff can guide you to the right direction. So that is my report. If you have any questions or comments, if you want to, another thing is, it looks like we still have 2 openings on Committee on Representation. So if you would like to be part of trying to make this a really inclusive and loving operation, this Presbytery, please put your name in the hat. That's it.
Thank you, Sharon. All right, we are now ready for the Board of Trustees. Jeff Siebert is Chair of Trustees, and he's going to give the report.
Thank you, moderator. Most of the items on the trustees report are for information. We have 2 action items. The first is this motion. At its May 26th stated meeting, the Board of Trustees voted to recommend that to Presbytery that we remove the restriction given to Mount Scott Park Presbyterian Church in Portland, that 50% of the proceeds from the 2018 sale of the church manse be invested for future use. On behalf of the board, I move that motion.
Okay, the motion is to remove the restriction given to Mount Scott Park Presbyterian Church, Portland, Oregon, that 50% of the proceeds from the 2018 sale of the church manse be invested for future use. Is there discussion? Please go to the reaction section at the bottom of your Zoom screen and choose the raise hand icon if you want to seek recognition.
Moderator, if I might provide just a little bit more rationale for those for whom this might be completely out of the blue.
Yes,
there was a day when we, as a presbytery, placed pretty firm restrictions on the sale of property, that the proceeds be used for capital improvements and not for the ongoing ministry of the congregation and other things. That is something that the Presbytery has grown more flexible about in response to the changing needs of congregations in these times. And so as part of that, though, in 2018, the Presbytery placed conditions on the money derived from the sale based on the recommendation of the Board of Trustees to ensure that the church began the hard work of revitalization and didn't end up burning through that money without having developed a plan. So the trustees are now satisfied that Mount Scott has indeed begun the work of revitalization, and releasing the rest of the funds will allow the congregation to continue the work by enhancing the building for use by community partners and retaining their pastor. So it is an example of what Brian said in his report about being gracious and flexible and responsive to the changing needs of churches, while also being attentive to our guiding principles.
thank you. That was helpful. Any questions? Discussion? Are you ready to vote? Okay, we're voting on the motion to adopt, remove the restriction given to Mount Scott Park concerning the proceeds of the sale of the manse. We will vote on the motion using the Zoom poll, which will appear on your screen shortly. Those in favor of adopting the motion will select yes, and those opposed will select no. The staff will now display the poll to the screen. Those in favor of adopting the motion will select yes. Okay. And no, press the submit button. The poll will be closing soon. The poll is closed. The stated clerk will display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion.
Moderator, there are 81 votes in the affirmative. There are 2 votes in the negative.
The affirmative has it. The motion is adopted and the restriction is lifted. Jeff, you may continue your report.
And then the second item, in case you wanted something more complicated, in an email vote conducted this week, the Board of Trustees voted to recommend that the Presbytery permit the Board of Trustees to consent to revise the existing ground lease with 1414 Kincaid which is the name of a limited liability corporation, 1414 Kincaid LLC, or enter into another ground lease for a buyer of the property titled to Presbyterian Collegiate Ministries LLC in Eugene in order to allow the sale of the buildings. On behalf of the board, I move the adoption of that motion.
Okay, the motion, you can see it there on the screen, to permit the Board of Trustees to consent to revise the existing ground lease with 1414 Kincaid LLC, or enter into another ground lease for a buyer of the property titled to Presbyterian Collegiate Ministries. Is there discussion?
You'll notice that Paul has put a note in the chat clarifying that the building does not belong to the presbytery, the land belongs to the presbytery. Do I have that right, or is it the other way around?
That is correct. It's the
Thank you.
building that is not ours. The land,
Okay.
leased land.
Yes, and this is pretty complicated. I have more information I can share if people would like to hear a little bit more of the background, and or Paul can tell us more about it as well.
I'd like to hear more.
Good for you. So I'll offer this, and then Paul can chime in where he wants. 1414 Kincaid LLC owns the building that is on land owned by Presbyterian Collegiate Ministries. Presbyterian Collegiate Ministries is an LLC whose sole member is Central Presbyterian Church Eugene, which has been vitally involved in this housing project, student housing project, for a long time. 1414 Kincaid LLC has a 55-year ground lease, and it wants to sell the building on that ground. Since Presbyterian Collegiate Ministries is a member in the 1414 Kincaid LLC, the sale would provide money to Presbyterian Collegiate Ministries to get out from under a synod loan that is taking all their revenue to pay off. The sale would allow Presbyterian Collegiate Ministries to pay off that loan to synod and have money left over to actually do campus ministry, which is what this is all about. To be clear, there is not a firm offer to purchase the property and change the lease at this time, but adopting this motion would allow the trustees to perform their due diligence on Presbytery's behalf, and if the way be clear, consent to a change in the lease that allows for a favorable purchase of the building without having to come back to Presbytery.
So
That's what I know.
So they're just going to sell the building and move it?
Sell the building to someone else and the building stays there. It's a substantial building,
Okay, all right.
several stories.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, did you have additional information?
No, not at this time.
Other discussion? Discussion?
I like discussions.
Discussions? That's a combination of a question and a discussion point. As I try to keep the dog from barking next to me.
This is Zane Buxton. I can't find my
Yeah.
raise my hand icon.
You're good.
Okay. I just wanted to comment. I don't know that anybody from Central Church is in the meeting at the moment, but Carol and I are involved at Central Church. Central has been a long supporter of campus ministry at the University of Oregon campus. The building, as many of you will remember, was a very small building, was torn down, a very substantial building. I'm saying 5 stories, maybe 6, I can't quite remember, is now sitting on that corner, and it provides some housing for students, The campus ministry operated on the ground floor primarily. You know, the Synod loan is a burden, and somebody else owning the building in campus ministry, you know, leasing space, whatever, however it might work out, would be a real asset to doing some campus ministry here in Eugene.
Yes, Mary Jane.
I'm from Central, and this has been long a project for Central to support campus ministry. Jennifer Martin came to Eugene as the person at the Koinonia Center, and we did get a loan, a large loan from the Synod. It is changed percentages in 2 years ago, and it's been a burden. But we still are very, very interested in campus ministry. We just need to get out from under that loan, which is really a big burden for our congregation right now. But we still want to be a very big part of the campus ministry.
Thank you.
I
All
think
I have to
maybe
say.
I'm ready to vote, so my questions were answered.
Okay. Seeing no other hands raised, we will move to the vote. The motion is, let's see, we're voting on the motion to permit the trustees to act on Presbytery's behalf to consent to changes to the lease agreement with 1414 Kincaid LLC. We'll vote on the motion to adopt. Oh, sorry. We're going to vote using the Zoom poll. It'll appear on your screen. Those in favor of adopting the motion will select yes, and those opposed will select no. The staff will now display the poll to the screen. Remember to click the submit button after you make your choice. The poll will be closing soon. The poll is closed. The stated clerk will display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion.
Moderator, there are 81 votes in the affirmative. There is 1 vote in the negative.
The affirmative has it. The motion is adopted and the trustees can act on our behalf on matters concerning the lease with 1414 Kincaid LLC. Jeff, you may continue your report.
Moderator, that concludes the last report of this president of the trustees, with appreciation for Paul and others who have made this work doable. I follow in the great footsteps of people like you who served in that capacity as well. And I'm a big fan of the musical Hamilton, where I learned that George Washington, when he decided to step down, said, quoting scripture, that it was time for him to sit under his own vine and fig tree and be at home in the land that we've made. So this president looks forward to following in the steps of George Washington and sitting under my own vine and fig tree.
Thank you, Jeff, for
Thank
your
you.
service on the trustees.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a break scheduled, but it feels like we just had a break. So unless there's an overwhelming show of hands to take another one, I'd say let's just continue. All right. The break is over. The meeting is called back to order and we are going to proceed with elections. We'll do this in 3 parts. First, we receive the report of the Presbytery's nominating committee. The committee will place names into nomination, and nominations will be taken from the floor for the offices and committee members as found in their report. Then we'll receive the report of the Treasurer Search Committee and proceed with nominations and an election of the treasurer. And finally, we'll hear from the Presbytery Leadership Commission regarding nominations and the election of the nominating committee. So to begin, I invite Dave Smith, Chair of the Nominating Committee, to unmute and give that committee's report.
Moderator.
Yes.
This is Paul Bells Templeman, the stated clerk, and on behalf of Dave Smith, he has directed me to read his nominating report, which I will do at this time. This is the report from the nominating committee. The nominating committee has worked hard to recruit nominees for the offices, board, commissions, and committees of the Presbytery. The slate of candidates you'll find in the background papers from page 22 through 25. That slate is almost entirely correct. The nominating committee has one change to that slate. On the Commission on Ministry Central, which is on page 25, under the class of 2025, the committee got its signals crossed and Greg Wood had declined the nomination. The nominating committee is nominating Karen Young, ruling elder from Westminster Presbyterian Church in Eugene, in lieu of Greg Wood. So Greg Wood is not being nominated. Karen Young, a ruling elder from Westminster Presbyterian Church in Eugene, is. Moderator, on behalf of the nominating committee, I nominate the names on the slate found in the background papers, page 22 through 25, with the exception I just noted.
The names as found in the slate are placed into nomination. You can see the change that's showing on the slide on the screen, replacing Greg Wood with Karen Young. Now we are open to nominations from the floor. If there are any further nominations, please raise your hand. Well, seeing none, the nominations are closed. Stated clerk, are there any contested elections?
Moderator, there are no contested elections.
Okay, we will vote on adopting the slate as amended. The Zoom poll, which will appear on the screen shortly. Those in favor of electing the slate will select yes, and those opposed will select no. The staff will now display the poll to the screen. Please submit your vote. The poll will be closing soon. The poll is closed. The stated clerk will please display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion.
Moderator, there are 80 votes in the affirmative. There are 0 votes in the negative.
The affirmative has it and the election is complete. Congratulations to all who have been elected. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Now we will move.
Moderator.
Yes.
Lee Lawrence Moiso, Rose City
Hello.
Park.
Yes. Hi.
I have a question about this open synod position. Is it for a minister or elder, and for which is it female or male?
Do you know what page that's on, or does Paul know the answer to that?
I know that they have particular requirements. Steve says he knows.
Okay. Bob, oh, there you go.
Yeah. As of right now, because we have both myself and Greg Neal as minister members, we need a female ruling elder to be a part of that position. We already have a racial ethnic position. So anyway, not like saying any female, but that's where we are. There was one candidate, but because meetings take place on a Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, and Friday morning, it's difficult for working people to, or unless you have flexible schedules, to fill those positions. But that's what we need.
Okay, female ruling elder.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions before we move on to the report of the Treasurer Search Committee? And I understand Dave Moat, the chair of that committee, will give the report.
Yes, it is true. I chaired the committee, and it was a long journey. I think we started a year ago, or maybe a little more. We cast a wide net. We came up with Mary Blaine, who's an elder at Peace Church in Eugene, and we interviewed her, and the committee unanimously recommends her be the treasurer of Presbytery. Class of 2025, 3 years.
Okay. Mary Blaine has been nominated as treasurer. Are there any further nominations? Please use the raised hand icon. All right, nominations are closed. We'll vote on electing Mary Blaine as treasurer. The Zoom poll will appear on the screen. Those in favor of electing Mary will select yes, and those opposed will select no. The staff will now please display the poll to the screen. Remember the submit button. The poll will be closing soon. The poll is closed. The stated clerk will display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion. Okay.
Moderator, there are 43 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative.
The affirmative has it. The election is complete. Mary Blaine is elected treasurer. Congratulations, Mary. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Pat Norby, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, just wanted to state, I was voting in the affirmative, so it's not a problem, but the poll closed very, very quickly, and I did not have time to submit my vote before it was counted. I think that may account for the low number of votes. I think everyone is in favor of the outcome. Just wanted to let you know that that's probably why it was so short.
I wondered that myself. I didn't realize I went so quickly. I'll give more time next time. Is there anyone else that wanted to comment about that process? Okay. Gail?
I just wanted to let you know too that the box disappeared before I could even click on it. So there was misfunction somehow in that one. It was different than the votings.
Okay.
And I clicked on it as quickly as I always do and clicked submit as quickly as I always do. And a little bit later, it said the poll closed before you submitted your vote.
Interesting. Paul?
Moderator, we did encounter a strange error with that. As far as we know, we didn't close it. It just closed on its own.
Okay.
So thank you for letting us know. But without a motion to take the poll again, it sounds like, I mean, it was an uncontested election. We could have done it by acclamation. So let's proceed. But please do let us know if the poll is closing too soon. As co-hosts, we can't tell that very easily.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, again, congratulations and thank you for taking on this office. Okay, now we are to the report of the Presbytery Leadership Commission, who make nominations to the nominating committee. Nancy Patterson, Vice Moderator for the Central Region, will give that report. Nancy, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you,
Thank you.
moderator. On behalf of the Presbytery Leadership Commission, I place the following names into nomination for the nominating committee. Chair, Class of 2003, Dave Smith. Members, Class of 2025, Don Shampoo, Paula Cooper, John Wren. Thank you.
Thank you for those nominations. Are there any further nominations? If you wish to make a nomination, go to the reactions section at the bottom of your Zoom screen and choose the raise hand icon. Once recognized, you may make your nomination. Yes, Scott.
Madam Moderator, I'm curious if there's already a balance for gender and minority in that existing committee.
Would the nominating committee like, oh no, it's the PLC like to speak to that? Or Sharon? Okay. I see a gender balance.
I don't know. Paul, you had the information on that. Maybe you'd be the best person to address that question.
Moderator,
it's very complicated with lots of regions and the sexes and the whatever else. So,
moderator, there are enough vacant positions that need to be filled that I think we would not exceed a category. You know, we wouldn't exceed a category that we couldn't balance out by filling another one, even before the next meeting if we needed to. So I think it looks like, okay, yes, and Sherry has provided some of that information. She's faster than I am getting to the spreadsheet. We're at male, female, 4-4, and I'm not sure what the, I think that's existing committee, and I don't know about minister to ruling elder.
Okay.
At the moment.
Thank you. Scott, did you have another comment or is your hand still up?
Madam Moderator, I just wanted to know with the addition of these three that have just been nominated, whether that would change the balance or skew it in some way or not. And just to ask to make sure that we have all the right equation in place for that particular committee.
So there are still openings. We need teaching elders, it says. And there is a balance of 4-4 with the current nominees in the chat. The information is there from Sherry. Sharon.
If the Reverend Dr. Scott would like to volunteer, that would be lovely.
We need people on the nominating committee. It's really a great place to serve. I've done it several terms over my lifetime. You get to have wonderful conversations with people all over the presbytery. Sharon.
I'm just trying to take that down.
Take your hand down.
We go.
Okay.
I found it.
All right. Okay. Are we ready for voting? Looks like it. Nominations are closed, except that there's still openings, so contact somebody. We'll vote on electing the chair, Dave Smith, and some members of the nominating committee. The Zoom poll will appear on your screen shortly. Those in favor of electing those nominated will select yes, and those opposed will select no. The staff will now display the poll to the screen. The polls hopefully will stay here. Remember to click the submit button. The poll will close soon. The poll is now closed. The stated clerk will display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion.
Moderator, there are 80 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all the new members of the nominating committee for your willingness to serve. Dan.
I just wanted to mention that I think this is reflective of what was in our packet, that we have less people to do more work. And so it's going to be difficult to find folks at times. And so if folks are able to serve, that's great. And those of us who are doing what we can, that's the best we can do. And I'm thankful that those people have come forward to say they'll serve.
Amen. Thanks. Okay. We are now, are we at the report of the treasurer? Am I at the right spot? Okay. Craig.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes.
Excellent. I can't tell because I'm in a hotel room and don't have my usual infrastructure. Well, hello, I'm Craig Butler. I'm the treasurer of the Presbytery of the Cascades for another week or so. First of all, I want to say congratulations to Mary Blaine being elected. This report is based on figures through the end of April. I've also seen the figures for May, and it's substantially similar. I'm going to present a high-level summary. The financial statements are in your packet if you want to go through them. But I figure what you need is some context. And so that's what I'm going to try to provide you. And yes, let's go to the first chart through April 30, business as usual. And by business as usual, I don't mean to be flippant or say, you know, nothing's really going on. We're actually having the same pluses and the same minuses we have had, I would say, since 2018, even across the pandemic. But this year, there's a little different twist. The per capita collections are lower than budgeted by a fair amount, as we'll get into. Presbyterian partnership giving, however, is running over budget. And this is just like last year. And we haven't spent what we budgeted in most mission areas yet. That's just like last year. Zoom saves us a lot of money on cost versus in-person meetings. That's just like last year. And the personnel costs are slightly under budget. We did that last year too. Next chart, please. Okay, I made a graph of our per capita situation. The line graph shows what's happening with per capita collections over the last several years. It's a graph of the percent of each year's total per capita budget that's collected by a given month along the bottom. And if you go back to 2019, we had what I call a normal year. In a normal year, half of per capita gets collected by the end of February and 90% by September. And we tend to miss the budget by only about 5%. In 2020, we had a very slow start. That's the, I think it's the green line. But we caught up. The slow start was due to the shock of the COVID pandemic. We ended up missing the budget that year by a little bit. 2021, last year, was a bit delayed, but we caught up by late summer. That's the red line. The 2022 is the brownish line, and it's off to a very slow start. You'll see it's shifted downwards from the other year's lines. Let's go on to the next chart. This is what I call a red, green, yellow chart. Sometimes it's called a stoplight chart. I try to put in here the main questions we need to ask about our finances. I'm sorry that some of the text is getting out of the right place in the table. But basically, use a set of ratios and other things to closely watch the most important things going on with the Presbytery's finances. So first of all, can we pay our bills? Yes. For every short-term liability we have $8 in short-term assets, so we could cover them 8 times. Per capita, as I just noted, we're seeing a shortfall, and if the rest of this year was the same as we collected the rest of last year, starting on May 1st, we will end up with a shortfall of $50,000. Now, do the sharp-eyed review by someone of the per capita figures in your distribution. We already found 7,400 of this, and I regret to say it's out of my own church. So I can take that down to 43,000 deficit. But still, it's a significant deficit even after that. Partnership giving, if we continue on our current pace, we'll end up with, like last year, a surplus of around $5,000. So that's great. So that's green. Are we within budget? We're going to have a small deficit on the administrative side and the program side, neither of which is as large as we budgeted. So we are within budget, but we have to watch this throughout the year. That's why it's yellow. Are we meeting our program goals? Well, so far, no, because most committees have not spent to their budget. And I'm wondering if COVID isn't still in the way in many cases. We're just restarting things after the COVID pandemic. The personnel costs are on budget. In fact, they're a little more positive than just budget. Are we spending from designated funds? As I just noted, right now, looking at the trends, I would predict those come in $160,000 almost lower than the budget. So we have a number of committees who are not yet spending to their budgets. The endowment, well, we all know the stock and bond market's been horrible this year. And it's suffered. So our endowment is suffering along with the rest of it. We have 2 good managers, and they're both near their benchmarks. The funds we have at Fidelity, managed by Headwater Investment, is down an excellent 7.8% through the end of May, which is well better than a combination of the S&P 500 and bonds, which would be down 12.123%. The other third of our endowment is at New Covenant Funds, and that is approximately in line with that 60% S&P 500, 40% bonds benchmark. Next chart. I call this all the news is fit to print. The audit is nearly completed. On Monday, Paul and I and others have a review meeting with the auditors. I've seen the initial letters. They state that we have no issues or problems in our financial statements, and there's no problem with communication with management or any such thing. So a positive audit this year. I wanted to remind you all that we are still taking requests for Barnabas funds, but we're shelving them. Barnabas fund balance has been depleted now for 3 months and is actually currently negative, and we're borrowing against future proceeds from a real estate sale that we hope is getting near to completion. It's the St. Mark property. And I think my successor should probably add to the list of things you're regularly updated about, a list of the buildings and what their status is, because just a one-liner on each, because they're half our assets. We have a total of $10.5 million in assets, and the buildings are carried as easily half of that on our asset sheet. Accordingly, we've lost a number of tenants out of these properties as we seek purchasers or otherwise use them. So our rental property expenses are outstripping the rental income. This is a fairly minor thing in our overall picture, but it could be a shortfall of $30,000. The last thing I want to do on this chart is thank you for supporting me over the last 7 years in my role as treasurer. It's been a real pleasure to have served the Presbytery in this capacity, and I'll treasure the relationships with you all. I may not miss the meetings, but I certainly will miss you folks. You're very definitely salt of the earth types, and I've enjoyed meeting you and dealing with the issues we have together very much. I know you will extend the same courtesies and support to my successor. And I'm not moving away anywhere or doing anything. I'm just looking forward to following future events with interest at the Presbytery. And Jeff, I'll end with, I don't have a fig tree, but I do have a grapevine, and I sit under it regularly, pruning it. So I'll definitely plan to keep doing that. There is one more chart, and it might be the most important in the package. How can we all work together? Per capita collections have been continuing this worrying downward trend. You should, like we just did at my own church, review your church's contributions to this and make sure if you're behind, you catch up. Same with partnership giving. Please pledge your partnership giving if you intend to keep giving PPG the rest of this year. It helps the Presbytery to know that you're doing that, so we can budget and move monies around properly. And stay safe and let us know how to help. And with that, I'll turn it over. There is one more chart, which is take questions, but maybe the best thing is to email Paul or I with your questions and we'll answer them. Thank you all.
Craig, thank you for your outstanding 7 years of service to the Presbytery. I did see a chat that Dan Fowler is offering per capita songs to inspire the congregation. Yep. So, okay.
In the style of, one of them's in the style of Elton John and Billy Joel. Another one's a hymn. And the other one is kind of like a country folk. So I'm trying to spread it out as much as possible.
I'd like to see those, Dan. Could you just send them to? Yeah.
Do you have any Grateful Dead?
That'll be next year. I was not a follower nor a fan.
Okay. Thank you. That's great. So before we go to the COM reports, I'm going to declare a 5-minute break that we skipped earlier because looks like right on time. So we will be back here at 4:20. All right, welcome everybody back to the meeting. The next item of business is the report of the Commission on Ministry Coordinating Commission given by Lauren Bostwick. Lauren, are you here?
I am here, Madam Moderator. Thank you
Yay,
very
thank
much.
you.
So the Commission on Ministry Coordinating Committee is responsible for developing the minimum terms of compensation each year and for recommending a COLA increase to the terms of call of pastors who are in positions currently. So I'm going to just read to you the recommendations and then I'll take questions. So our Presbytery policy determines that the minimum terms of compensation for pastors, elders commissioned to serve as pastors and certified Christian educators is 80% of the Synod's median for the previous year, as published by the Board of Pensions in a publication that they put out every year called Living the Gospel. This year, that document was not published. The Board of Pensions, therefore, was recommending, or at least determined, that dues were going to be based on an increase of 1.5% of the national average in 2021. If we applied 1.5% to the Synod 2021 median salary, that would increase it from $72,320 to $73,405. Our policy requires 80% of that median, so 80% of 73,405 is 58,724. But because the actual Synod median was not published, we propose that we waive the policy for a third year in a row and use a calculation that is known and fair. Presbytery's minimum compensation for 2022 is $51,827. If we apply 8.3%, that is the known CPI-U for the Western region, to last year's minimum, it raises the minimum to $56,129. That's what we're suggesting that the minimum be for 2023. Additionally, the Commission on Ministry Coordinating Commission recommends that all pastors, elders commissioned to serve as pastors and certified Christian educators receive an 8.3% COLA based on the CPI-U for the Western region. That comes from their report of May 2021 through April 2022. And that is by our established policy. So I move that.
The motion is that the minimum FTE compensation for pastors, elders commissioned to serve as pastors and certified Christian educators for 2023 be $56,129. And the full text may be found on page 28 of the background papers. Is there discussion? Please go to the reactions and use the raise hand icon. If you can't locate the raise hand icon, just wave. Charlotte Mace.
Thank you, moderator. I appreciate the work that this committee's done. That $56,000 at this point is not, it would be tough for somebody to live on, let alone support their family on that $56,000 for our region. So I just hope that our presbytery realizes that we are making it difficult to locate talent from around the country if they are having the expectation of being able to find a single family home in our area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlotte.
Was there another comment or question? All right, we'll vote on the motion using the Zoom poll, which will appear on your screen shortly. Those in favor of setting the minimum full-time compensation at $56,129 will select yes, and those opposed will select no. The staff will now display the poll to the screen. Remember to push the submit button. The poll will be closing soon. The poll is closed. The stated clerk will display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion.
Moderator, there are 74 votes in the affirmative and 6 in the negative.
The affirmative has it. The motion is adopted and the minimum compensation is set. Lauren, you may continue the report.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Additionally, the Commission on Ministry Coordinating Commission recommends that all pastors, elders commissioned to serve as pastors and certified Christian educators receive an 8.3% COLA based on the CPIU. That's for comment. That's what we're recommending. We can't, by policy, mandate that, but we are, that is what we're recommending for this year. I have 2 other items of business that just came in this past weekend that did not get into the white papers, and I am going to read those to you, and then Clark, who attends those meetings of Northeast, will be able to comment further on these if you need comment. The first is that the Commission on Ministry for Northeast requests permission from the Presbytery of the Cascades to form an administrative commission with original jurisdiction to support Colonial Heights Presbyterian Church, Portland, Oregon, as it discerns its future. I so move.
Okay. Zane, did you have a question or comment?
I actually had a comment on the previous action, so let it go at this point.
Okay. So the COM for Northeast requests permission from the Presbytery of Cascades to form an administrative commission with original jurisdiction to support Colonial Heights Presbyterian Church, Portland, as it discerns its future. And I see this text is appearing in the chat. Okay. COM further, did you want the further requests? Is that separate? The administrative?
Yeah, I think they should be two separate
All right.
motions.
Okay, so that's the first one. Are there comments or questions about the creation of an AC for Colonial Heights? You're ready to vote. We'll need a poll, please.
Moderator.
Yes.
I believe we had set this up as one poll for both parts of the motion. Apologies for that. Perhaps you could ask if anyone wants to divide them. Maybe we need to make sure that everyone knows what they're voting on both parts. That might be simpler than us trying to create 2 slides at this, or 2 polls at this point in the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
We can do it if we need to, but maybe we can see if we can get agreement on both parts.
Thank you, Paul. I'll read the next motion then too. That the Commission on Ministry for Northeast requests permission from the Presbytery of the Cascades to form an administrative commission with original jurisdiction to support Cherry Park Presbyterian Church, Troutdale, Oregon, as it discerns its future.
Moderator, I apologize.
We
Wait,
lost
wait,
you.
wait. You're muted, Paul.
Moderator, there are 4 slides for 2 motions. I confused matters. We were unclear about whether the first motion for Colonial Heights was supposed to be 2 motions or not. It's actually 1 motion. It makes sense. The second slide can't stand on its own as a motion. So let's pretend none of that happened. And Lauren had already moved the first motion. Let's process that. That's about Colonial Heights. The second one is about Cherry Park. So apologies. I got a little nervous because I thought something with the slides.
Okay, so I am going to read through the entire text I have for the motion for Colonial Heights, just to make sure we're all on the same page before we come to the vote. And it says, the Commission on Ministry for Northeast requests permission from the Presbytery of the Cascades to form an administrative commission with original jurisdiction to support Colonial Heights Presbyterian Church, Portland, Oregon, as it discerns its future. COM Northeast further requests that the AC be given authority to implement appropriate steps and conclusions it reaches regarding the future of Colonial Heights, including but not limited to closure, merger, or plans for revitalization. It is requested that the makeup of this AC be determined by the COM Northeast and should include an invitation to active members of the session and Board of Trustees of Colonial Heights. So is there any further discussion before we vote? Okay. Yes?
Madam Moderator, this is Reverend Clark Sclera, Advocate for Congregations and Clergy. Just to let everyone know, this motion has come before you through a conversation between the Commission on Ministry and the pastor and elders at Colonial Heights. So it's not coming out of a vacuum. They've sort of reached a point where they're very open and interested in this because as their pastor retires at the end of July, they will be faced with some of the considerations that are listed in the motion. So this is coming kind of jointly from the church and the COM.
Okay, Clark, thank you. Could you give a definition of what is an administrative commission?
Sure. Paul might be better equipped to do that, but I'll give it a stab and he can clean it up. An administrative commission essentially is a group of people commissioned by the Presbytery to do a particular task. In this case, the commission would have original jurisdiction, meaning at the point of its creation, it would displace the session as the official decision-making body of the church, which is why there's a desire to include session members on that. So they still have a voice, but there's a group that can kind of come alongside, support them as they do the work. We create administrative commissions whenever there is a closure or one of a major event in the life of the church, because at some point, the session can no longer function since it's closing, and you need some entity that can responsibly finalize details with, say, the corporation of the church or those other pieces.
Thank you. And thank you to others who added in the chat. So anything else before we proceed to the vote? Okay. Please display the poll. And there, shall we adopt the motion to create an administrative commission? Remember to click the submit button. The poll will soon close. The poll is now closed. And the stated clerk will display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion.
Moderator, there are 82 in the affirmative. There are 0 in the negative.
The affirmative has it. The motion is adopted and the Commission on Ministry has permission to create an administrative commission with original jurisdiction for Colonial Heights. Okay, Lauren, would you like to
Madam
continue?
Moderator, then I'm going to read the text for the second one. And Paul, if you have slides for that one, you can put them up. The Commission on Ministry for Northeast requests permission from the Presbytery of the Cascades to form an administrative commission with original jurisdiction to support Cherry Park Presbyterian Church, Troutdale, Oregon, as it discerns its future. COM Northeast further requests that the Administrative Commission be given authority to implement appropriate steps and conclusions it reaches regarding the future of CPPC, including, but not limited to, closure, merger, or plans for revitalization. It is requested that the makeup of the Administrative Commission be determined by the COM Northeast and should include an invitation to active members of the session and Board of Trustees of CPPC. I move it.
Okay. The motion, it just left, but you had an opportunity to hear it and to read it. The formation of another administrative commission with original jurisdiction to support Cherry Park Presbyterian Church in Troutdale. Is there discussion? Seeing no hands waving or raising, we are ready to vote on the motion to permit COM to create that commission. Those in favor of adopting the motion will select yes, and those opposed will select no. The stated clerk will display the poll to the screen. Remember to click the submit button. The poll will close soon. The poll is closed. The stated clerk will display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion.
Moderator, there are 84 votes in the affirmative. There are 0 votes in the negative.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Clerk.
Madam Moderator, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much for this work and that report. Yeah. Lauren has been the rock of the COMC and the COMCC. Thank you. There's a nice thanks there. Okay. And was Kate Belt's question answered? When a administrative commission replaces session, does this mean congregations cannot send racial ethnic commissioners to presbytery meetings? Bill, did you?
Ruling elder commissioners. I'm sorry if that.
Sorry, ruling RE. Yeah, good. Thank you, Kate. Okay. I don't know the answer to that. It wasn't on my presbytery exam. So we'll have to research it. Bill, you had your hand up also?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Bill Van Nostrand, Pastor Head of Staff, Astoria. Just a point of corporate memory. Many of you are old enough to know that these churches that we have established administrative commissions for today were original members of the PUN network. The Jack Hodges proposed Presbyterian Urban Network of Portland small churches. And beginning with Trinity, then Northminster and Laurelhurst, now Colonial Heights. I noticed they don't have a pastor at Jack's old church at present, and Cherry Park, etc. It just gives me pause, and
I just like to give a prayer of thanksgiving for the way we were able to collaborate in the model of and direction that Presbytery is going, to support one another and keep us afloat. We decided early on that we should all hang together or we'll all hang separately. And I think by attrition, both in members and in pastoral leadership, we're hanging separately. God bless the Presbyterian Church and the collaborations in the presbytery. But as the former pastor at Northminster, they hired me and said, we have money enough for 1 year. And I was there 10. It just gives me pause, and I just offer up a prayer of thanksgiving.
Thank you. Thank you. Others. Okay. It's a lot to try to read the comments and watch for hands, so I'm sorry if I miss things coming and going here. We are now, are we really now at the point of honorable retirements? Okay, I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Okay. We are there. We now recognize the ministers of word and sacrament who have served the church well and have now discerned the time for honorable retirement. William DeLong, Jeff Sievert, and Bob Stevie.
Jeff Sievert was ordained in 1987 by the Presbytery of the Cascades. Most recently, he has completed 26 years of service as pastor of Reedville Presbyterian Church. In retirement, Jeff looks forward to the possibilities that retirement allows, including weekends, Christmas, sailing, home renovation, and many, many more, knowing Jeff.
Bob Stevie was ordained in 1983 by Santa Barbara Presbytery. Most recently, he's completed 6 years as pastor of Hillsborough Presbyterian Church. In retirement, Bob looks forward to baseball scorekeeping with the Hillsborough Hops, camping, hiking, guitar, and time with grandkids and family, as well as continuing service to Presbytery and Synod. Thank you, Bob.
William DeLong was ordained by De Cristo Presbytery in 1987. Most recently, he has completed 10 years as Director in Spiritual Care and Clinical Pastoral Education at Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center. In retirement, William hopes to write, meditate, travel, and build a home in Manabí, Ecuador, on the shores of the Pacific Ocean. Now there's retirement for you.
Jeff, William, and Bob, you have completed your active service, and now you continue service to God as ministers of the Word and Sacrament, honorably retired. Your siblings in this presbytery rejoice with you in the evidence of the Holy Spirit in your work. We thank God for your dedicated ministry in the Church of Jesus Christ, and we praise God for the grace that has allowed your ministry to touch many lives.
Now we come to mark with you this significant moment of your calling as the presbytery confers upon you the status of honorably retired. While we know this begins a time of rest and the enjoyment of other callings, we value the experience you have gained and the skills you have acquired throughout your years of ministry. Therefore, we welcome your continued participation in the life of the church using your gifts in meaningful ways.
We hope that together with the whole church, you will find new opportunities to fulfill your baptismal calling as one marked by the Holy Spirit, a disciple of Jesus Christ. May God continue to bring joy and peace to your life, just as you have blessed the Presbyterian Church with your ministry and the gospel of Jesus Christ. I invite us to pray. God of grace, we thank you for the gifts of Christian ministry given in your servants, Bob, William, and Jeff. We celebrate the years of active service and rejoice in the blessings so many have received through their ministry. Give them now a time of refreshment and rest and new opportunities for living the good news of your love in Jesus Christ. Amen. So, thank you to each of you. It says it's time for another break. But wasn't it just a few minutes ago that we did take a break? Okay, so I think we can keep going. Unless anybody vociferously objects. Okay. So our next item of business is the second part of the report of the Presbytery Leadership Commission. Brian Heron will continue this report. Brian, are you ready?
I am ready, but I'm not sure we have everything together. I think Tom Campbell-Schmidt was going to be here, and we're running far enough ahead that
that he's not here. Okay.
Yeah. Paul, did you have any communication with him? Do you know where we are with him?
Yes, we are ahead of docket. He should be here by, I think, 5 o'clock. Let me see. I try to give him a little bit of lead time. Probably not enough this time.
Okay.
And Sherry, do you have an ability to try to contact him? See if we can get a hold of him?
I'm calling him as we speak.
I knew you would be.
Okay.
Moderator, I do have an item of business that was overlooked in the nominating committee report, an action item.
Let's take care of it.
If you looked in the nominating committee report, you would have seen an action to suspend the Presbytery bylaw, Article 7, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's correct stated clerk terms, but you don't suspend bylaws. Unfortunately, we do not need to suspend any bylaws. However, we did what the nominating committee was intending to do was, before they placed Mark Fry's name into nomination as the vice moderator for the Northwest region, was to note that we have a standing rule, and standing rules can be suspended, that said that vice moderators are elected to a 2-year term, not subject to re-election. So essentially what we've done is we have a breach of a standing rule at this moment, but we could suspend that rule. If someone wanted to make the motion to suspend the rule in order to keep Mark Fry as our elected vice moderator, that would be appropriate.
Move it.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we suspend the standing rule. Is there further discussion?
You can't discuss.
Oh, you can't discuss.
You can't
Okay.
discuss this motion, sorry.
It's a non-discussable. Okay. So Scott, we can't discuss it. Do you have something else you needed to add?
Madam Moderator, I thought I just heard the clerk say that standing rules could not be suspended, and then we just voted. Made a
Standing
motion.
rules can be, bylaws cannot be. Is that correct?
That's correct. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's
Thank
okay. Mhm. Any other questions? Are we ready to vote? All right, are we doing this by Zoom poll?
I hope we can. Do we have a poll, co-host, do we have a poll that we can quickly throw up that's to suspend the rule? Maybe we're working on that right now.
Okay,
Let's give it a moment.
there we go.
Actually, we need a different one. We probably need a generic one. So let's close
Okay.
this poll. We don't want to take up new business during the unfinished portion of the meeting. I hope we don't.
No,
I mean, we could. We almost suspended that rule. I closed the poll before we did. The rule we want to suspend is a different rule. If we could create a poll that just said, shall we suspend the rule in order to, maybe we should say this, shall we suspend the rule in order to elect Mark Fry to a second term as vice moderator? That would suffice. It will require a 2/3 vote to pass. And the person making the polls is also calling Tom Campbell Schmidt. So, you know,
multitasking.
we need grace right now.
We need to sing the per capita song.
Can we just give Sherry a little shout out here because she's awesome?
Oh, yes. I saw that Dan was going to record his per capita songs and get them to Sherry. So we will all look forward to those.
You know what we could do, moderator, we could ask if there's any objection to suspending the rule and electing Mark Fry as moderator. Oh, we don't need to do that. Let's just
There we go. So we have a Zoom poll. Shall we suspend the rule and elect? So choice 1 would be yes, and choice 2 would be no. Choice 1 would be yes, we will suspend the rule. Please make your decision and submit your vote. The poll will close. The poll is closed. The stated clerk will read the vote.
Moderator, there were 78 votes in the affirmative. There were 0 in the negative.
Thank you. And thank you to Mark for agreeing to serve again. Okay. Now we are awaiting the arrival of Tom.
And I see him listed in the participants now.
Okay, wonderful.
All right. Ready for me to start the second half of the PLC report?
That would be great. Thanks.
Okay, great. I was actually gone during the PLC meeting, the Presbytery Leadership Commission meeting in June. But looking over the minutes, there is a proposal from Jeffrey Siebert to support and endorse the Lift Every Voice Oregon initiative. And the PLC decided to put some peacemaking funds toward that and to commend it to our congregations for endorsement, but felt that it would need to come to the Presbytery for endorsing it as full Presbytery. So this is the motion. Moderator, the Presbytery Leadership Commission recommends that the Presbytery adopt the following motion: that the Presbytery of the Cascades become a public endorser of the Lift Every Voice Oregon project to collect signatures and advocate for the passage of the resulting bill. And Vicky, you're.
Yep, I got it. Thank you. It's moved that the Presbytery of the Cascades become a public endorser of the Lift Every Voice Oregon LEVO project to collect signatures and advocate for the passage of the resulting bill.
And moderator, the PLC has requested that the Reverend Tom Campbell Schmidt, honorably retired, speak to this motion.
Welcome, Tom. You may unmute. Tom, are you?
Can you hear me?
There we go. Great.
Okay, great. Okay, am I ready to go?
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. I want to express. Okay, I first want to express my thanks to our Presbytery leadership team for giving me this opportunity to speak about initiative called IP17, which is a means of providing greater firearm safety for Oregonians in general and school children in particular. Just yesterday, I received a message from a member of the St. Andrew's congregation, which Patty and I served until our retirement in the fall of 2014. And this woman had seen a picture of me, apparently, in yesterday's issue of Willamette Week. I'm not sure how they got it, but nonetheless, it was talking about how just in the last week, LEVO, Lift Every Voice Oregon, had collected 30,000 signatures. And of course, our goal is that we need to turn into the Attorney General's office 140,000 signatures by July 8th. And so we're sort of sprinting toward the finish line as I speak. But she told me something that I was not aware of, and that was that back in 2012, she had just heard the news about the Sandy Hook shooting, in which 20 children were murdered and 6 adults were also killed. And she was not a person of faith at that time, but she was desperately seeking hope. And so she came to one of our services and she said, I found hope. And it really touched me very deeply. And that she has come to believe in the unconditional love of God and Jesus Christ, and also that we are called to love our neighbor and to act to do justice and to love kindness and walk humbly with our God. So I want to follow that just by saying briefly, one of my mentors and perhaps one of yours was the late Fred Rogers. As you know, he was an ordained Presbyterian minister who for many decades led the popular public television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And for a special gift, for speaking to the needs of children. When there was a tragedy, especially perhaps in the news or in their neighborhood, he would always tell the children to look for the helpers, the first responders, the firefighters, the police officers, the ER doctors and nurses, teachers, spiritual and moral leaders. And that's what I did a couple of years ago, actually, when, like many of you, I was becoming more and more concerned about the mounting gun violence in our nation as well as in our state, affecting our schools, our colleges, stores, malls, entertainment centers, and many other public places. And I wanted to help address this issue. And then I stumbled across a movement called Lift Every Voice Oregon. It was first launched by a pastor, a rabbi, and a gospel singer back in 2014, following the mass murder of 17 students and teachers at a high school in Parkland, Florida. these spiritual leaders got together one day and they said, enough, enough. We must do something as leaders of a faith community to direct our attention to this problem and bring about some common sense solutions. And so out of their concern, Levo was born. Other people began to join them, people of faith as well as people of just goodwill. And pretty soon, two initiatives were developed. They're called Petition 17 and IP 18. IP 18, which was seeking a ban on certain types of assault weapons, has been deferred to the state legislature here in Oregon for the coming year. And it will seek to ban high-capacity ammunition magazines, which are used in semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15, which was recently used both in Uvalde, Texas, killing 19 elementary school children, fourth graders, and 2 teachers. And it was also used to gun down 10 African Americans in Buffalo, New York. And perhaps you know this fact as well, which I just came across recently, and that is, for the first time in recorded history of our country, the leading cause of death of children in America is now gun violence. This disturbs me greatly. As I look out at our nation's seeming addiction to gun violence, it brings to mind the narrative in Luke's Gospel, chapter 19, in which Jesus is looking out over Jerusalem and he's weeping. And he says, if even you had only recognized on this day the things that make for peace, but now they are hidden from your eyes. And so this drive to place IP 17 on the November ballot largely has been driven by the faith community, and it is now in full swing. It's already been endorsed by such groups as the League of Women Voters, Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, Oregon Coalition of Christian Voices, the Oregon Synod Assembly of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, a number of Jewish congregations and rabbis, Rabbi Kahana of Temple Beth Israel being one of the chief petitioners, the president of the Muslim Educational Trust, just to name a few. And we seem to be picking up more and more endorsements almost on a weekly basis. And so now our ranks actually have swollen so that we have what are called circulators like myself and my wife Patty that have numbered over 1,500 volunteers who are located in cities and towns throughout the state of Oregon. So briefly, what does IP 17 propose to do to reduce gun violence and to better protect children as well as Oregon's general population? Well, essentially, IP 17 has 2 important parts. First, it will ban large capacity, high velocity ammunition magazines used in semi-automatic rifles and limit them to 10 rounds or less. These highly lethal bullets fired by the hundreds in just a few seconds have caused massive carnage. Now, IP 17 will require a permit to purchase a firearm in Oregon. Not only not unlike a permit and a license that is now required to drive an automobile. And this will involve training and instruction in the proper use of a firearm, as well as how to safely store that firearm, because one of the facts is that many of the mass shootings have been done by students who have gone home and have gotten their parents' guns. The last thing it will do is it will close a loophole in a background check, which is now required by Oregon law, but most background checks come back within 24 hours, but some take longer. And current law allows a gun seller to complete a sale after 36 hours if no federal or state background check has come back by then. And this has become known as the Charleston loophole, which is named after that incident in Charleston, South Carolina, in which 9 African Americans attending a Bible study were shot to death by a young man who would not have received that gun had a completed background check been done. And we in Oregon have that same loophole, and we aim to close it. But the clock is ticking as we are now in the home stretch of this campaign. With little over 10 days remaining before all signature sheets are due in the Attorney General's office, our goal of obtaining 140,000 signatures is well within reach. But we are asking for your support to help us get across the finish line. And if you'd like to accept this challenge to help us do that, I would welcome a contact from you as an individual. I would recommend also that you simply go to the lifteveryoregon.com website, where you can say, yes, I would like to participate. I would like to help collect signatures, and you will be sent the appropriate materials. So that is my appeal, and that hopefully will give you a context for what IP17 is all about. And so as we now continue with discussion and debate, I'm going to remain online, and I will be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have. And again, I simply want to express my thanks to all of you for your willingness to take up this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Is there further discussion and debate about this motion? Please use the raised hand icon. Scott Crane.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Scott Crane, teaching elder temporary supply in Trout Lake. For those of us on the Washington side of the Columbia River, is there any initiative in the Washington state legislature that we could be aware of and have our congregations on that side of the river sign?
Tom?
Does anybody?
Actually, I think it was about 4 or 5 months ago, your legislature and passed gun safety provisions that are really not unlike what we are hoping to do here in Oregon. We're somewhat of a Johnny-come-lately, as both California and Oregon have taken the lead, and we're hoping to join them.
Okay, thank you. Further debate? Okay, seeing none, are you ready to vote? Okay, we are voting on the motion that the Presbytery of the Cascades become a public endorser of the Lift Every Voice Oregon project to collect signatures and advocate for the passage of the resulting bill.
Moderator Leslie Johnson from Ruling Elder is trying to get your attention, I think. Sorry.
Okay, so I don't see a hand, so please, yes, Leslie?
Yes, I can't find the hand. I'm sorry.
Okay.
People at Rose City Park Presbyterian strongly support this. Back in April, we did actually had congregation members sign the both IP 17 and 18 during our, after our time in worship. That was met resoundingly with people stepping up and signing it, or else if they were Zoom attendees, signing it by going to the website and just signing the petition. You can do it either way. And we've, a couple of weeks ago, we decided to send some of our peacemaking funds to Levo as well to help support the effort. So if anybody has a group of friends that they'd like to send this out to, or their local PTA friends or whomever, I would highly recommend doing that to get it well over the number of signatures needed.
Thank you. And the online option is in the chat. www.lifteveryvoiceoregon.com. Yes, Dan.
I was just going to ask if we could not just have it in the chat, but if we vote to approve this, have this go out to every pastor and or teaching elder and ruling elder, so that this has some teeth to it, because not everybody's going to copy what's in the chat. And if we really approve this as a presbytery, and I hope we do, I think it should go out to every church in our presbytery if we can.
Brian?
Yeah, this particular motion has to do with the Presbytery of the Cascades endorsing it, but PLC already made a motion and approved to make sure that it's commended to every congregation. So once we do this, we'll be also taking this next step to get it out to every congregation. Make sure you have the information that you need.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion, debate? We're ready to vote. That the Presbytery of the Cascades become a public endorser of the Lift Every Voice Oregon project to collect signatures and advocate for the passage of the resulting bill. We will vote on this motion using the Zoom poll, which will appear on your screen shortly. Those in favor of adopting the motion will select yes, and those opposed will select no. Remember to push the submit button. The poll will close soon. The poll is now closed. The stated clerk will display the poll and declare the number of votes for and against the motion.
Moderator, there are 77 votes in the affirmative, 3 in the negative.
The affirmative has it. The motion is adopted, and the stated clerk will notify Lift Every Voice Oregon that the Presbytery is a public endorser of the initiative. So the next item of business is the report of the stated clerk.
Thank you, moderator. And thank you all members and commissioners at this meeting. We are moving along quite quickly. We were concerned. We never know how long business will take, right? Business takes the time it takes. It's not all scripted. Depends on what you say and not. A short meeting is not necessarily better than a long meeting. I do think that we have taken some significant action today, and I'm grateful for that. I am about to let the Lift Every Voice Oregon folks know that we want to be an endorse that. In fact, I just clicked submit. So we should be on their website shortly as one of the endorsers. Some of you may know that I am going on sabbatical starting next week. I believe the Presbytery is in good hands with my colleagues taking over my responsibilities. I will miss many of my responsibilities, but I'm looking forward to a break. I will be back in September in time to help with the trustees meeting and start planning for the November Presbytery meeting. I do want to thank the staff for helping with this meeting, and it's really been great to have Cole Autumn, who is working on the technical side of things, putting together some videos for us, running the slides during the meeting. Kelly Dixon, our new communication person, is also doing great work with the design and helping us think through some of the decisions we make, that I make, or the team makes. And certainly thank you, moderator, for your great work this year, moderating Presbytery meetings in a strange time. I think what made it even stranger is we were hoping to get back to some in-person meetings. I think we wisely decided not to. We're looking into the future to hybrid options, and there are some better hybrid options to have meetings, maybe not on Zoom, but other platforms that are out there that may be more intuitive in terms of how to raise your hand and how to vote, and polls that stay up for more than 3 seconds consistently. So we're looking forward to the future when it comes to technology. Some of the costs, I heard one Presbytery is doing meetings. I think they got a special deal at first. Then the company said, sure, you want to do your next meeting? It'll be 25 grand for that meeting. So we probably aren't going to do a meeting for 25 grand, but if you know how technology works, right? Something that costs 25 grand this year, in a few years will be, $250. So that's what I'm looking forward to, as well as my sabbatical. But I do wish you all a wonderful summer. I am grateful for the opportunity to take a sabbatical. I am grateful to be your stated clerk. I love working with you all. I love the fact that I do get to do so many different things. I love the questions. The zanier the question, the better. But even your ordinary quotidian questions, I try to answer with some aplomb. Moderator, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Paul, and blessings on your time away. I'm very grateful that you waited until after this Presbytery meeting before taking your sabbatical. All your work is much appreciated, and thanks to everyone for your participation. Blessings to Doug as he becomes the moderator of the Presbytery. It's a great experience. Doing it on Zoom is different. But thank you all for your participation and your patience. The meeting will be closing with worship, and that will include the installation and an offering, and that will be on a video. Is that correct? All of that? Okay. And then I will give a live benediction at the end. As many of you as were baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ.
There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female, for all are one in Christ Jesus.
Lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace.
There is one body and one Spirit, just as we were called to the one hope of our calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in all.
We are called by God to be the Church of Jesus Christ, the sign in the world today of what God intends for all humankind. The great ends of the church are
the proclamation of the gospel for the salvation of humankind,
The shelter, nurture, and spiritual fellowship of the children of God,
The maintenance of divine worship, the preservation of the truth,
the promotion of social righteousness and the exhibition of the kingdom of heaven to the world.
The calling of Christ is to willing, dedicated discipleship. Our discipleship is a manifestation of the new life we enter through baptism. Discipleship is both a gift and a commitment an offering and a responsibility.
Today, we are installing Doug Anderson as moderator, Jennifer Martin as moderator-elect, Mary Blaine as treasurer, Mark Fry as vice moderator of the Northwest region, and Carol Eckert as vice moderator of the South region. Doug, Jennifer, Mary, Mark, and Carol, the grace bestowed on you in baptism is sufficient for your calling because it is God's grace. By God's grace, we are saved and enabled to grow in the faith and to commit our lives in ways that serve Christ. God has called you to particular service. Show your purpose by answering these questions. Who is your Lord and Savior?
Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior.
Will you be
Jesus
Christ?
Christ is my Lord.
Will you be Christ's faithful disciple, obeying his word and showing his love?
I will with God's help.
Do you welcome the responsibility of this service because you are determined to follow the Lord Jesus, to love neighbors, and to work for the reconciling of the world?
I do. I do.
Will you pray for and serve the people with energy, intelligence, imagination, and love, relying on God's mercy and rejoicing in the power of the Holy Spirit?
I will with God's help.
Members of the Presbytery, do you, as the people of God, confirm the call of God to these people in these offices and in the service of Jesus Christ? If so, say, we do.
We do.
We do.
I do.
Will you support and encourage them in these ministries? If so, say, we will.
We
will.
I invite you to extend a hand towards your screen as we install these members through prayer. Faithful God, in baptism you claimed us, and by your Holy Spirit you are working in our lives, empowering us to live a life worthy of our calling. We thank you for leading Mary, Doug, Jennifer, Mark, and Carol to this time and place. Establish them in your truth and guide them by your Holy Spirit, that in your service they may grow in faith, hope, and love, and be faithful disciples of Jesus Christ, to whom with you and the Holy Spirit be honor and glory now and forever. Amen. Doug, you are installed to service as moderator. Jennifer, you are installed to service as moderator-elect. Carol, you are installed to service as vice moderator of the South region. Mark, you are installed to service as vice moderator of the Northwest region. And Mary, you are installed to service as treasurer. Whatever you do, in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God through him. Amen.
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 There's a song in our Glory to God hymnal that has become an inspiration and really a clarion and call for those of us engaged in the struggle to address the epidemic of gun violence in our land. Lift every voice and sing has become very dear to us. And I suspect to you as well.
Based on a poem by James Wendell Johnson and later set to music by J.R. Johnson, this powerful text was first shared on the anniversary of Lincoln's birthday in 1900 and is a summons today to all who seek liberation from various kinds of oppression, including gun violence.
As we prepare to receive this offering, we hope that this song's powerful words will be an inspiration to lift your voice in support of this work as well. There are no big money gifts behind this effort to bring Initiative 17 before Oregon's voters in November. Really just small donations from groups and individuals much like yourselves.
So every dollar and every hour you give, we greatly appreciate. For us, this is the most important work we can do right now for the well-being of every child in our state and in our nation.
Please join us in praying the song's third stanza as we bring to mind all those who have been victims of gun violence, who have been injured, who have been killed, the families who have grieved, the communities who have experienced this loss in towns and cities throughout Oregon, as well as throughout the United States.
God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way.
Thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever on the path, we pray.
Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Amen.
So if we were gathered together in person in a sanctuary, I would have us open our hymnals, the Glory to God hymnals, to number 765. And as Brian encouraged us, continue to sing. The song that we would be singing is May the God of Hope go with us every day, filling all our lives with love and joy and peace. May the God of justice speed us on our way, bringing light and hope to every land and race. Praying, let us work for peace. Singing, share our joy with all. Working for a world that's new, faithful, when we hear Christ's call. Thank you, everyone. Go in peace.
Thank you, Vicki.
It's fun to watch all the names. I hadn't seen everybody that was here. Okay. Bon voyage, Paul.
Thank you. Gotta run. No.
Finish your sewing.
I finished it.
Did you?
Yeah, let's see if I can show you what I did. This is the, I don't know if you can see it.
Look at that.
Oh, there's a feather on it even.
I thought it was a swoosh. I thought, okay.
Nice job.
That's wonderful. And that's going with you to Italy?
It probably will go to Italy. It will also go on the Pacific Crest Trail for 200 miles. So,
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So,
And you don't have to worry about testing to come back into the US?
that's right. I can't call in on my last day.
Yeah.
Another week.
There you go. Yeah.
That excuse has left. So. Right.
For now, anyway.
Right.
Well, thanks for everything.
Yeah, no, thank you. Look forward to working with you as the Leadership Commission Chair.
Yeah, we'll get this transition going. Okay.
Hi, Anne. Good to see you. Hi, Gail. Good to see you. And Leonard. Yeah. Hey.
Okay. So.
All right.
Well, all right. Thanks.
Okay. We let Brian Craker into the meeting a moment ago, Brian, but we finished early.
You guys must have finished early. I raced home to try to catch the last half of the meeting, but apparently you guys had better plans.
I guess we did. Yeah.
Wow. Hey, well done then for getting the meeting done early.
Right. We just, postponed all the business till November, maybe.
Right. There's this thing called a table. Sometimes it works well.
That's true. Yeah.
All right. All righty. Well, good thing I raced home.
Well, yeah.
Hey, have a fabulous weekend.
Hey, thank you. You too.
All right.
Yeah. So, so long, everybody. Who is the... Oh.